Meeting of the County Commissioners meeting to order. If we could all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If we could remain standing for a moment of silence. It's our understanding that the Speaker of the House, Mrs. Adrienne Jones, last Friday's son passed away. And we don't know any details about it, but we could probably, if we'd all just keep her family and her family in our prayers. Thank you very much. We have a couple consent items. First, regular session minutes dated February the 25th, 2025. We have liquor minutes dated February the 25th, 2025. And we do have, anyone have any questions of the minutes? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. President, we also have another one there. It's not on yours.
It's not on mine.
It's the Chestertown Garden Club raffle only, May 2nd, 2025.
It was, I apologize, it was.
No, that's okay. Look,
You took it off? Okay.
if
I'll
you-
make a motion.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent items as presented.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. And we have three special Class C licenses. The first one is the Kent Association of Riding Therapy Incorporated, and they have applied for a beer and wine license for March the 22nd, 2025. We have Timothy Kern Memorial Fund, application for beer only for March the 29th, 2025. And we have the Community Fire Company of Millington, an application for a beer, wine, and liquor license. That's a multiple event license, which allows them to have up to 12 events, I think, on this one license. These are alcohol applications, so they're in need of a public hearing, and we will consider tonight a public hearing. So if anyone in the audience would like to comment for or against any of these three applications, feel free to do so at this time. There being none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. President, if it's okay, I'd like to do the motions one at a time so the records
That'd be fine.
is clear. So the first one, I'd like to make a motion to approve the special Class C per diem liquor license application for the Kent Association of Riding Therapy Incorporated.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it.
The second one, as soon as it comes up here. I'd like to make a motion to approve the special Class C per diem liquor license application for the Timothy Kern Memorial Fund.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it.
And on the third one, for the Millington Fire Company, I'd like to make a motion to approve the multiple event special Class C per diem liquor license application for the Community Volunteer Fire Company of Millington.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. I'm going to jump out of order here just a little bit. Tom, let's jump down to the administrative hearing, and we can take that so Ms. Jones won't have to sit in here all night.
Sure. And if you could come forward, is the inspector here?
Yeah.
Inspector? You could come forward too. And I'm just gonna, this is a continuation of a prior hearing, but I'm just gonna place you both on your own. This is a hearing. You want to raise your right hand. You solemnly swear and affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony that you are about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief.
I do.
And I would suggest we start with Inspector Rizal, just to give us a little update since we were here last.
Yes.
And we can call on the licensee.
All right. Everything is supposed to be up to date, and it is. We spoke, I spoke to the clerk of court last week, and so did Rose Osborne, because I came in here and talked to them again at the economics thing. And they said that she does not see anything that is due on my end. But then we talked to the state, which we have not heard back from them. And they said, we called the state comptroller's office, and we called them 3 times, and then we called another lady, which I don't remember her name, and she was going to contact them and get back with Rose or myself and have nothing. And their answer was, no answer due to heavy call volume. So I don't know, my articles of revival have been, there they are right there, they've been put in, but we haven't heard.
What we'll do is, if the clerk at some point can make a copy of those, we'll enter a copy into the record
Okay.
and into our file.
Okay,
Okay.
but as right now, I'm very, I don't know what to say. I don't know what else to do.
Well, did the clerk of the court say that she could issue you a trader's license?
Well, and I
a
don't know
business
why I
license?
didn't go right in there that day, but I'm coming into Chestertown tomorrow, and I'm gonna go in there and see what's going on.
Because if it's coming up cleared on her end, she could issue the license.
And then we're done with this.
Right, because if you have the trader's license, that would resolve the violation here. If the comptroller claims you owe something later, that would be between you and the comptroller for now, until they flag your license and don't let you renew it. But if you get a trader's license issued, then these proceedings would be concluded here.
Yeah, well, they went back, and then something popped up from 2022, which has all, it wasn't true what they were saying, and it was all straight. Everything on my end is straight, and I've done everything I can possibly do without hearing from the comptroller's office.
Inspector, do you have any comments or anything to add?
The only thing that I can add is it's very difficult trying to maintain conversation with the state and getting hold of the state, trying to resolve this. I know that she's been working very hard trying to get this resolved, and hopefully that she can go to the clerk tomorrow and be issued a license.
Yeah, I know, I've experienced this with state agencies. You get a message saying, we have a high call volume today, call back on another time.
And
They
even if,
don't even give you an option to leave a message for a
No.
callback, they just tell you to
Well,
call
Rose
back.
did leave 3 messages with 3 different people, and we haven't heard any call back from any of them.
and even if you do get hold of someone, they transfer you to this one, that one, the other one, and by the end of it, nobody knows what's going on. So it's a problem.
But you do have, is the business in good standing? Do you have the articles? You mentioned you have the articles here. Were
Articles
they-
of revival,
Were they
yes.
accepted?
They were sent in, but because we're waiting for some kind of letter from the comptroller, we're trying to get a clearance letter from the comptroller, and that has not come as yet.
So the articles have not yet been accepted by SSTAT?
They've been sent in, but they've not been, I haven't heard anything back from them.
Well, my suggestion is this, Commissioners. If the clerk's office, based on what she's done so far, if they issue her a trader's license, then that would conclude this. So my suggestion would be, and I know this has been hanging around for a while, but we continue it again for 30 days. If within that 30-day period, you've been issued a trader's license, then you could conclude this matter with no action needed. If trader's license isn't issued, we'll come back and see where we are. The business is required to have the trader's license, but I understand that you've made, from my interpretation of what you're saying, is that you've made good faith efforts and done everything you can on your end to process things. You're just waiting for turnaround from the state of Maryland. That's what it sounds like to me.
If I can add one thing, it is renewal season, time. So the trader's license, if you're putting this out a month, the trader's license expire April 30th, and then they would have to be issued another,
You think
A
we
new
should
year.
continue it for 60 days rather than 30, given that?
so I'm not sure where we're gonna be at with,
Right, well,
since
she's
she
trying to
didn't
get
get
a
it.
trader's license retroactive
That's correct.
to this year, because I think you have to have a trader's license at all times, so you would need to pay for and have a trader's license for the current year,
Correct,
and then you would need to get one for next year.
correct.
Yeah, they're gonna, I think they told me at the clerk's office they would be sent out in the middle of March, the form for the new trader's license.
But if the clerk's office can issue you a current trader's license and a renewal, then there's nothing further that we would need to do here. Maybe because of the renewal schedule, that we set this back in for 60 days, and that way it'll be in May, early May, and.
I
it'll
hope to be all done by this way before then.
Well, if you have, my recommendation to the commissioners would be that if you have all the paperwork and everything's here and you submit that to the inspector and staff's reviewed it, that it's acceptable, then administratively, the commissioners can just close it out.
And if she goes in the next week or so and has it done, then she could just notify
Right.
the inspector, the office, and then we'll know it's taken care of.
Right, and you could put it on the agenda and just note it and close it out. You wouldn't need to be here. The
Right.
commissioners can just do that on the record. Your presence wouldn't be required, unless you wanted to be here.
Oh, I'll miss everybody.
Well, we like having you, but if
We'll stop
it's,
and see you.
Okay,
if it's just closing it out, it's administrative action, so you wouldn't need to be.
I appreciate your patience in all this, and again, I send praise to your economic office. They have been a huge help. I couldn't have done a lot of this and Bonnie, and I think I just talked to you Friday when I was in here again, so.
I hope
Well, I
you-
thank you very much.
Not only you've been trying, but like you said, our economic development license, office is
They've
trying
been-
to.
They've been I mean, she spent, Friday, we were in here, and she was just trying to get a hold of the office, and it was a good 2.5 hours I was in here.
Tom, was it my understanding that she needs to get one for the current year and then get one at the end of the,
Yes. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
the
I'll have to
requirement is
too.
you have to have a valid trader's license the whole time you have the liquor license, so you can't skip a year. You would have to pay for and get the license retroactive for
Right.
the existing year, and then take care of the renewal.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
Any other questions?
Anything else?
Good luck.
Good
All right.
luck.
Well, thanks.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie.
You're welcome.
I guess you want to just take action.
You want
You're going to
copyright
continue this hearing for approximately 60 days.
I'll make a motion that we continue the hearing for approximately 60 days.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. So we'll back up again now, Tom, and you've got the legislative
Yes.
protocol.
Yes. You have a legislative session this evening.
We'll have to, well, you'll go through the
I'll go
protocol
through it,
first,
yes.
and then we'll make a
Yes.
motion to go into the session.
Correct. So after you make your motion to go into legislative session, you have 3 items to take up. One is a first reading, and this would be where you just determine whether or not you're going to introduce the bill and schedule it for public hearing. You're not voting it up or down, you're just determining whether or not you want to go forward. And the item for first reading is Code Home Rule Bill 1/2025, and this is to allow assisted living facilities in the critical residential and community residential area. And this would allow 8, correct me if I'm wrong, 8 to 16 beds as a special exception, in addition to the 1 to 8 as a permitted use. And again, this would be a first reading. The other 2 items are for third reading, and this would be where you would take a vote as to whether or not you wish to pass the bill as currently written and introduced, reject the bill, or pass it with amendments. And you have 2 before you. One is CHR 10/2024, and this is the Construction Trades Board. This essentially expands the Board of Electrical Examiners. We have a Board of Electrical Examiners, but we need boards for other construction trades too. So this gives you a unified board. And the other is CHR 9, 2024. This is for dog kennels for fox hunting clubs. This was before you previously for public hearing. There were comments made at the public hearing, and as a result of that, the planning department has made some proposed amendments to that bill. So you can either pass the bill as it was introduced, you could pass it with the amendments that have been prepared, or you could reject it. And as part of this bill, I think Mr. Mackey or Mrs. Gerber could explain this a little further, but as part of these amendments, there would be a licensing regimen set up. That would be in a different section of the code. That would not be a zoning.
Let's talk about that when we get into
Sure,
section.
okay.
Okay.
So I just wanted to bring that to your
Sure.
attention. So you would first entertain a motion to go into legislative session.
Okay,
I'll make a motion that we go into legislative session.
Second.
got a motion and a second to go into legislative session. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? We are in legislative session.
And now the order, do you want to take the items that are going to move faster first?
Well, we could.
Okay. So why don't we have,
Take the second one?
I was going to say, why don't we have Mr. Tracy come forward for the assisted living?
That's fine.
Because this is for introduction, it's not for,
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
For the record, my name is Rob Tracy. I'm an associate planner with the Department of Planning and Zoning. As Tom has mentioned, I'm here tonight to talk about a zoning text amendment, a citizen-sponsored text amendment for assisted living facilities. The proposed text amendment that we're hoping to introduce tonight would increase the capacity of assisted living facilities in the community residential and critical area residential zoning districts from 8 to 16, so it would be doubling that capacity. The text amendment sets forth new criteria for review, review criteria, which would be reviewed by both the Planning Commission and the Board of Appeals. Currently, assisted living facilities are an administrative special exception for up to 8 beds. The Planning Commission on February 6th met and discussed this Planning Commission. Specifically, they discussed the public need for the zoning text amendment, which is an additional, to provide for additional capacity for assisted living facilities. The Kent County Comprehensive Plan notes that by 2040, it's expected that 1 in 3 residents will be over the age of 65. The Planning Commission found that the public need for the zoning text amendment, and they also discussed the consistency with the comprehensive plan. After that deliberation, they sent a favorable recommendation to this body. And so tonight, I'm just here to ask for the introduction and scheduling of a public hearing for this text amendment. And I can go into additional detail if you'd like about the criteria or what's currently in our ordinance.
So we're just going to decide whether to move this forward?
correct. If you want to go forward with this, you direct the clerk to schedule it for public hearing. I believe this has already been to the Planning Commission, and they have made a favorable recommendation.
Yes, that's correct.
But again, that's just a recommendation. It's up
And
to
this
you.
is actually an existing facility that's just trying to expand the number of beds from, I think the maximum is 8, and they want to go to 16.
Yeah, that's correct. Yep.
Any questions, gentlemen? Then entertain a motion to move this forward.
I'll make a motion to introduce Code Home Rule Bill 1-2025 and for the bill to be scheduled for a public hearing.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. We would next take up Code Home Rule Bill number 10, 2024, the Construction Trades Board. And this is before you today for third reading.
So we'll be voting on this.
Yes.
Good evening.
Good evening, Bill.
The item before you tonight is the third reading for Code Home Rule Bill 10-2024. This bill would amend the local laws of Howard County by revising Chapter 70. Kent County, what did I say?
You said Howard County.
Oh, we were talking about how, sorry.
Previous
We were
job.
having a conversation about that, okay. Chapter 73, 192, and 210, and it would create a new board. This legislation responds to changes in state law regarding the licensing of master electricians, and also would provide an identified need for staff to have experts to refer to. For this particular bill, no written comments were received during the comment period. So, I'm happy to answer questions. I know we've been over it a couple times with public hearing, et cetera, so, yeah, thank you.
Any questions, gentlemen?
No, I know we've been over this, but I personally have a lot of people who are interested in this board and think
Great.
that moving forward would be a very productive thing, so.
There's no other questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to adopt Code Home Rule 10-2024, Construction Trades Board.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't go anywhere, because next we have Code Home Rule Bill 9-2024, the fox hunting dog kennels. This is before you for third reading, but there have been amendments prepared for you to consider.
Well, let me just, Bill, before we start, I could just say that this was something that's been a little out of the ordinary for us. And we were looking at a way to possibly, we had spoken about a way that we could possibly allow this to move forward, but have some safeguards, or the ability to put some safeguards in. If in fact, some of the opposition, if they were correct about the noise or whatever, that we would have an opportunity to deal with it. And I think we have mentioned it, and I tell you, I give it credit to Bill. He's come up with what we think is a very good solution. So, Bill, you want to go through it and explain what you've come up with
Sure, I can do that.
briefly?
I'll keep it brief.
No, take your time, I'm joking.
He's not a lawyer, he'll move it, he'll move it quickly.
So the item before you is to create a new land use in a single district to add dog kennel fox hunting club. There was a lot of correspondence received on this. I know you've had a very lengthy public discussion. I was watching that at home at the time. And as county attorney cites, the idea is that the zoning code might be too rough a tool for this use. The idea being that in order for this board to ensure that things are going well over the next 12 months, instead of it going through a special exception, which is sort of a permanent authorization with conditions up front, that if this process were to be simply permitted subject to a licensing procedure, then a bill could be introduced by this body in the future, hopefully very close future, that would create a licensing procedure under Chapter 64. It's an existing chapter in our code. It licenses animals. A new Article 2 could be created that would specifically provide for authority for this board to be the license authority, provide standards for the locations of kennels, fencing, dog runs, and any other areas, require applicants to submit a layout for your review and approval. It would provide conditions that you could impose to prevent any nuisances, sort of the standard unacceptable noise, odor, noxious materials. It would provide for additional conditions that you might be able to add regarding things such as landscaping or screening, fencing, sound insulation, and other physical improvements that would allow you to modify the project in order to address some of these concerns. It would provide for probationary period so that the applicant would be able to return anytime within the first 12 months at your request if you've received comments, and that license could be reviewed, and then after that provide for an annual review of the license, again at your discretion, for any sort of issue that would perhaps come forward, and also provide a process to revoke the license for cause related to these requirements.
and then there would be sort of the standard, public notification, annual licensing fees, and appeals. So that's the proposal. That doesn't exist yet. If you all choose to go that direction, then you would direct staff to follow up on that and provide something for you all to review that would be to your pleasure.
So the thing that we were sort of saddled with, we had a group that wanted to have this fox kennel. We've never had them before. We don't know a lot
Right.
about them. And then on the other side, we had a community that was kind of, questioning the noise, they had a lot of questions about how that would affect their community. And what you've come up with, I think, at least I've looked at it, and I know my colleagues have as well, that this would give them an opportunity to go ahead and do what they want to do. But it also gives us a chance, if there are problems arise, that we can have them try to correct it. And obviously, if it was more severe than what we thought or something, maybe you don't issue the license until you get this specific problem corrected. And the truth of the matter is, there may very well not be any problems. So that was what we were kind of struggling with. Now, I don't know how the applicants feel about something like that, but that was sort of some safeguards. We were trying to help them and safeguard the neighboring community, make sure that we weren't opening up something that we would have no control over after we said okay.
Sure. Mr. Mackey came up with addresses your concerns, and I would agree that the animal ordinance, chapter 64, is the best place in the code to put the licensing requirements and procedures. So what Mr. Mackey came up with was very appropriate, and I think it addresses your concerns. One comment I like to make is that with respect to the legislation that is before you, the zoning legislation, it does state that the effective date is contingent not only upon the Critical Areas Commission approval, but it's also contingent upon the adoption of the licensing regulations in Chapter 64. So you could vote and approve the Fox Hunting Club dog kennel legislation, the text amendment, tonight, but it would not be effective until and unless you have adopted an ordinance to amend Chapter 64 to provide for these licensing procedures in there. So that was a way to clear this issue out, pass this if you wish to go forward, but it's not effective until the next piece of legislation is done. And one of the reasons why we did this is because with respect to zoning legislation, land use, there's a 90-day shot clock. So once you had your public hearing, you have 90 days to take action, unlike other pieces of legislation. So if we were to postpone this and take everything up at once, you may be running up against those 90 days. But by doing it the way Mr. Mackey has it laid out, which I think is an excellent solution, if you wish to adopt the text amendment, you can do that tonight, but it's not going to be effective until the regulations are adopted and put in place.
How long, what does that do to post? I mean, how much longer will it take?
It would be the normal process. So somebody would need to draft the regulations, put them in bill form. It would come to you for first reading, just like what we had with the assisted living, scheduled for a public hearing, and then after the public hearing, you would schedule it for a vote. I'm thinking probably in this process, from today, it would be roughly 90 days, maybe? Does that sound?
It always depends on when there's dates available for public
Yeah.
hearings and legislative dates, but it doesn't have to go to the planning commission because
Correct.
it's not in the zoning code.
It's not
So
a
that
text
does
amendment.
certainly shorten the process.
Correct. Because it's not a zoning text, it's going to go in your animal ordinance, which is chapter 64 of the code. That's where you have dog licensing requirements and permits for general kennels. So this is the appropriate place, in my opinion, to put this. But again, it's not gonna be a zoning text amendment. It's referenced in the zoning text amendment, because you have to have this license to have the use. But,
Where are we at in the critical area commission?
That I'm gonna have to ask Carla.
For this text amendment, they have not seen it,
Okay. Well, you've been in discussion, right?
yes.
They're well aware of it, but it hasn't come to them formally. If you were, yeah.
Timeline on that. And I know you can't, you're out of your hands.
Even if we approved this request without the amendment, it still wouldn't take effect. It still wouldn't.
Correct.
Correct.
That's what I'm
So,
saying.
correct, yeah, that's what I thought. That's the point Commissioner Nickerson's trying to make is, this may not extend it a whole lot longer. It depends on the critical areas.
Correct. And the Critical Area Commission, in their review of projects, has a pretty long window of time from which you have to submit something to when the hearing would be, and we may have already missed the deadline for their April meeting, believe it or not, and so this would go into their next meeting after that. But I have talked to them about it, and I will be getting it off to them as soon as we have something that has been decided to send to them.
It's possible that we could have our licensing legislation passed before the Critical Area Commission has given their approval.
That was the point of it.
That is possible.
So,
And that's because the Critical Area Commission won't take up legislation from us until we have adopted it. So that's just the way the law is written, that you have to have taken an action before they can take an action.
Any other questions?
no, I don't think so.
Just a quick comment. First, I would like to thank the applicant for the time that she and Mr. Fry devoted the other day. I had a chance to go down and look at the kennels in Centerville, and then had the pleasure of going out to the site where these foxhounds are going to be kenneled. It was very, very helpful to me to actually see that, and they were actually gracious enough to do that. And I know, Bill, you've done a wonderful job with this amendment, in my opinion. I think it serves the kennel and the Foxhound Club well, and it also serves the citizens who live in the area there in a good way also, because if there are problems, and I don't suspect there's going to be any, but I'm not an expert in that, and I don't want to say that I am at this point, but I think it's a good compromise. I think it serves both sides very, very well. And so I guess at this point, I'd like to make a motion.
Your motion would be to
Second.
adopt it with amendments.
Do you want me to read all of the amendments? I mean, I know they're already in the record.
Yeah, I think it's before you. I think you just need to reference them. You're going to adopt it as amended based on the amendments that were submitted by Mr. Mackey. I don't think you have to go and read each one.
Okay. Well, then I'd like to make a motion to adopt CHRB 9-2024 as amended by Mr. Mackey.
And I got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it.
And I would just note for the record that these amendments are in writing. That's one of the requirements. They have to be in writing, and they are, in fact, in writing and available for public inspection.
Tom, do you want a motion on directing staff?
You would want to have a motion to direct staff to prepare legislation to amend Chapter 64, which is the animal ordinance, consistent with what's been presented by Mr. Mackey.
I'd like to make a motion to move to amend section 4 by adding language at the end of the section stating, and contingent upon the adoption by the Board of County Commissioners of licensure requirements in Chapter 64 of the Public Local Laws of Kent County, Maryland.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it.
And additionally, I'd like to make a motion to move to direct county staff to draft a proposed CHRB for introduction to amend Chapter 64 of the local public laws by creating a new Article 2 that sets forth a licensing process for fox hunting club dog kennels, which will deal with the amendments that have been previously discussed.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it.
Now you would entertain a motion to
Go back in open session.
Make a motion that we go back into open session.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to go back into open session. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. We are back in open session.
Thank you all very
You
much.
all would.
And we'll get to work.
I would just be interested to hear how you feel about that.
Oh, sure. So, we're grateful that there was a compromise worked out. I understand, certainly you're in a position of, needing to balance, a very specific interest in the general public. And we look forward to bringing forth the new amendment and working through this with you all to get the licensing so that we can continue to move forward with the kennel. And also, grateful for Mr. Yeager and certainly Mr. Mackey and Ms. Gerber for helping us through this process, as well as, making sure that the process is followed. For instance, making sure that we get this part passed so we can have it concurrently run with the Critical Area Commission and not further delay, as we're eager to get the hounds to their new home. So,
Sure.
yeah, so we'll certainly see you soon, hopefully, and continue the process.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure working with you
Yeah,
all.
absolutely. Thank you.
I believe I'm up again.
You are. Well, we took care of that one.
I think we had the resolution.
We're down on the resolution now.
Mr. President, you do have a resolution before you with respect to the detention center. And the quick background on this is the Maryland Annotated Code Correctional Services article provides that the sheriff of each county has authority over the care and custody of incarcerated persons and inmates, unless a county, by resolution, decides to take on that responsibility. Historically, the sheriff was responsible for the jail, and in 1989, the county took that responsibility from the sheriff, and the county directly, through its warden and staff, had oversight of the jail. At this point, it's desirable to have the sheriff, subject to supervision by the county commissioners, but to have the sheriff be responsible for the jail and to have oversight over the jail. And this resolution provides for that. It also provides that the employees of the detention center would remain county employees of the detention center. They would not be employees of the sheriff's office. As you may recall, there are some counties, and I believe we did this here, where the employees were deputy sheriffs. The employees will remain county employees, but the overall oversight of the detention center facility will be by the sheriff if you pass this resolution.
Real quick, Tom, I just was listening to what you were saying about the commissioners would have supervision over the sheriff. I'd like to see that basically, and just for the record, the sheriff is an elected official.
Right.
he answers to the people of Kent County and not to the commissioners. So I would like to see, and just correct for the record, that the sheriff would partner with the commissioners to provide appropriate oversight
You have
and
the,
not really supervise his.
you wouldn't be
role.
doing the day-to-day supervision of the sheriff, but you certainly would have the right to go back and change this if you want by further resolution. And I think it would be understood that the sheriff would be working with you and keeping you advised and informed. You're not washing your hands of the jail, you're simply having the sheriff provide the daily oversight of operations of the jail.
I just wanted that to be clear.
Yeah.
I didn't want anybody to think that we were. Right.
It's not the intent to micromanage the sheriff.
No, it's not. That's his prerogative.
But ultimately, the commissioners are still, I think, it's still responsible ultimately.
We work together.
Yes.
Any other questions? Then I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2025-02 as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Okay. Moving on, department requests or updates. Pat, you're gonna talk to us and I think, talk about the constant yield tax rate to begin with, and, how that deals with our future property taxes.
Okay, so I have two items for you tonight. The first one is to talk about the constant yield tax rate certification. As you know, every year, the State Department of Assessment and Taxation calculates the constant yield tax rate for every county in Maryland. The rate calculates the property tax for each county, what it would have to be, what they would have to charge to receive exactly the same revenue that they did in the previous year. So basically, if assessments go up, the county tax rate would have to come down to receive the same revenue. And conversely, if it happened the other way. So this year, let's see. I can work this. Okay, so this year, the net assessed property values are projected to increase by 4.7%. And let's see, let me get this. Okay. And the constant yield tax rate for Kent County is 97.61 cents. So in order to get the same revenue as last year, we would have to decrease our property tax rate by about 4.6 cents. The increase in the net assessed property values is going to generate about 1.6 million in new revenue if we leave the tax rate at the dollar at the 1.02.2. So additionally, I guess with this, if it's phased in over the next 3 years with the new assessments, we would probably get about just under about $4.8 million over the next 3 years for about a 14.1% increase. And I think we wanted to take a minute to talk about, there's been some conversation. Recently, the state SDAT issued the reassessment information for Group 1. And that report indicated that residential property assessments had increased by 20.8%. And I think there was some concern, and there was some conversation, that this could be the property tax increase that homeowners would see. And the difference between the numbers that SDAT issued and the constant yield is that the numbers that SDAT issued, excuse me, are full cash values
and not net taxable assessed values. So the full cash tax values don't include the homestead credit, which caps the increases at 5% per year, and it doesn't include the homeowner's credit. So the constant yield data indicates that the increases over the next 3 years will be closer to 14.1% than 20.8. So we just wanted to make that clarification. It's unfortunate when SDAT issues that information that I don't think it's clear that it's not taxable data, it's just full cash.
Well, and one of the things we talked about is that due to the fact that there's so many variables that goes into that, like only a third of the county is reassessed every 3 years. So
Yes.
this is only going to pertain to the one that was
Group
just-
one, yes.
Yes, that was just reassessed. And then, like you said, there's a cap on if it's your primary home, there's a,
If it's your primary residence, your taxable assessable base cannot increase by more than 5%.
Right. Gotcha.
So yeah, it's a little misleading that they issue the data in so many formats.
Right.
But I think the constant yield is the best indication of the money that we're gonna see. And so if we take it a little farther and we talk about that 1.6 million that we're probably gonna see in 2026, our FY 2025 budget was 67.6 million. So this additional revenue represents about a 2.4% increase. So it's not a huge increase for us going forward. And the other thing that we already know, as I'm sure we're tired of discussing, is that the blueprint is looking for $1.3 million in new money, and the other pass downs for Annapolis are about $438,000. So most of that new money generated,
Right now,
yeah.
subject to
Oh, it could be changing as we sit here. Or
not
stand
going
here.
down.
No, so it's gonna be a challenging budget year for us. I mean, we don't know what the income tax numbers are yet. And I will say that these property tax values exclude, personal property for utilities. So we do think that we're gonna see some additional money, with those, but they're not in yet, so.
Right.
So anyway, we just wanted to bring this in front of you, let you know what the revenue forecast
good.
was looking like.
Thank you.
Okay. And then the next thing that I have for you tonight, let's see. I'll get there. Okay. Okay, so you have in your packets a response to the property tax set-off study that was done. So back in 2024, Chestertown, Rock Hall, and Galena commissioned a study to be done of the property tax set-offs in Kent County. Excuse me. The underlying assumption in this study is that the municipalities in the county provide duplicate services, and that the citizens of the municipalities are paying taxes to both jurisdictions for the same service, but only receiving the service from the municipality. And in this study, they identified 3 areas: law enforcement, highways, and parks, that they thought were duplicate services. Okay, so in the study, they calculated the property tax set-off 2 ways. Approach 1 was that they used the dollar value the county pays to provide the service. And approach 2 was they used the dollar value that the town provides or pays to provide the service. And this is basically a summary of the report's estimates. For both approach 1 and approach 2, they calculated what the tax differential would be and what the tax rebate would be. So you can see under approach 1, the total tax rebate would be just a little under 1.3 million, and it would have tax differentials anywhere from 7.6 cents to 15.44. And under approach 2, it would have a tax rebate of 670,000 and a tax differential of basically 2 cents to 10.45 cents. Okay, So we looked at the study, and we had a couple of observations. The first ones have to do with the duplicate services. When we looked at the data and our statistics, 34% of law enforcement activities occur in the municipalities. So we really don't feel like that's a duplicate service. Our county law enforcement is providing services to the municipal residents. So we had that observation. The second one was with the parks. We also did not feel that these are a duplicate service. Wharton Park has amenities and programming that just aren't offered in the municipality parks. All of our youth and adult sports leagues participate out there. We have summer camps. And we also found that that Wharton Park is widely used by municipal residents. Okay, so moving on, we thought there were a couple of items that were just not considered in the report. So the first one is that there's some county departments that are primarily focused in the municipalities. The largest one is economic development and tourism. And management estimates that about 90% of this department's efforts are focused on initiatives and businesses within the municipalities. So this would be a situation where costs were shared with non-municipal residents and the services mostly incurred within the municipalities. Another item that we felt that was not considered in the report were the dollars that the county leveraged for infrastructure initiatives, business, and projects. And while these aren't called tax rebates, they provide dollars for municipal projects and businesses and relieve the municipalities from having to fund them. Over the last 10 years, the county spent a little over $10 million on these projects, and you can see them listed there. We had water and wastewater infrastructure projects in 2 municipalities. We did municipal park, pool, and beach enhancements in 12 locations. We helped with the Dixon Valve relocation, senior housing infrastructure. We made direct payments to 167 municipal businesses, and there were about $500,000 of other projects. And the last item that we felt that was not considered in the report was the enterprise zone property tax credits. And while these are not tax differentials, the property tax, excuse me, the property tax was reduced for 20 municipal businesses in 2024 to the tune of about $308,000. And it's estimated that over the 10-year, thank you, over the 10-year span of the credit, that these 20 businesses will probably receive about $2.5 million in credits. So overall, this summary talks about the dollar value of services and credits provided to the municipalities by the county that the municipal governments do not have to pay for, and we feel like that was not reflected in the study. So with that, I guess I would turn it back over to you. You have a draft response that if you want to move forward with, I guess we would need a motion to provide guidance to staff to issue.
Any questions?
No, I think she did. Thank you.
Entertain a motion to.
I'd like to make a motion that we sign the draft that we have been presented with in our packet and forward this to the mayors of all of our municipalities.
Got a motion, do I have a second? Motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Then, Public Works Director, Dan Mattson. I think.
Human resources.
Wait a minute, I'm sorry, Human Resource Director. Mr. Miller.
Good evening. I'll try to get out of your way quickly. There's 3 items that
Mr.
you have.
Miller, we kind of just looked at this. I think you can put 1 and 2 together.
That's what I was going to say.
Okay.
I think it's easy to do. What those 2 items reflect
You'll know that recently, 2 of the corporals in the detention center took voluntary demotions to correctional officers, which led to recruiting to replace those 2 corporals. The HR department, along with Director Shepard and a team, interviewed 4 candidates, selected 2, and we're here today to ask for permission to promote those 2 individuals from correctional officers to corporals.
Any questions, gentlemen?
Yes, sir.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve filling the 2 vacant corporal positions at the Kent County Detention Center as recommended.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it.
The other item before you is a request for contingency monies. You might remember in September 2023, when the state came forward with the idea of the Time to Care Act. It's also been called Family. It's been referred to as FML on steroids, because it's basically family medical leave, but a paid program with the monies coming jointly from the employer and the employee. The state has spent the last year and a half kind of trying to refine it, trying to understand it, getting input from employers, getting input from consortiums. This body signed on to be part of the consortium, excuse me, the consortium to work as a group to ensure that our interests are held correctly. At the time that the agreement was signed, effective October 1st, 2023, we were told there would be fees, as a membership fee for it. We were never billed the first year. They finally got around about a week or so ago to billing us. I've talked to probably my counterparts at 7 or 8 of the other counties, and nobody actually had budgeted for it because we hadn't heard anything except for information coming back and forth. The consultants have been working on it ever since, and it's now time to start budgeting, start paying for the work that's being done. My department, I did not budget for it for FY25. Frankly, I don't think anybody I talked to did. So we're asking for contingency money for this first invoice, and certainly it's already been added in my draft of my FY26 budget.
So Jim, this was, if I remember correctly, this was a mandate that came down. And the employees, I mean, there's going to be a deduction from their checks.
It can be, the last number that I heard was 0.9% of contribution to it, with the employer being required to pay half of it. And the employer has the option to pay more than that, but the employees cannot contribute more than the other half. And we're nowhere close to knowing if and when that'll happen, or what might be the decision to do this. The latest information, make sure I got the dates right, the latest information now is that they wouldn't even begin taking deductions from employees until January of 2027, and the funding for it to employees who would want to access these monies wouldn't occur until January of 2028.
Any other questions, gentlemen?
Is the school system handling this in a different fashion?
No, actually, they're part. It's a group.
Maybe.
That includes the school system. Let me see if I can get you the exact. It's actually being handled through Maryland Association of the Boards of Education, Maryland Association of Counties, and the Maryland Municipal League is actually that consortium that we're a party to.
I guess my question is, if this isn't going to take effect until 2028, why are we?
We'll have to start putting money into the fund in
invoiced?
27. The consortium, the collaborative, continues to work on it, continues to
try to get the state to refine what they're doing and to understand the ramifications of, particularly for small businesses, telling a small business that they could have to put up as much as 0.9% of their payroll to fund this thing and no less than 0.45% of their payroll. Larger organizations might be able to absorb it, but what the collaborative is doing is trying to make sure that our interests are represented in this and to develop a program that won't leave us basically hanging out there as a solo.
So this is a proactive approach to.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
I'll entertain a motion if there's no more questions.
I'll make a motion to approve the use of $5,000 from contingency funds to cover the Maryland Association of Boards of Education, MABE, invoice for the Time to Care Act Insurance Collaborative annual membership fee.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jim. Now we got Public Works Director, Mr. Dan Matson.
Yes, sir, and for the first item, Ms. Joanne McNamara, the County Grants
Man,
Program
nice to have you in.
Administrator, will be assisting me with this item, as she did the great majority of the work on it, so.
Sure, I'll go ahead. All right, for the record, Joanne McNamara, Grants Program Administrator for the county. The item that I have before you tonight is a request for an approval to submit an application for grant funding via the federal congressionally directed spending accounts, more colloquially known as federal earmarks. Although we do not yet have a federal budget in place for the following fiscal year, this is the time where we have the opportunity to submit a request for those direct federal appropriations from our senators, Van Hollen and also Brooks, and from our Congressman, Andy Harris. The purpose of these is to ask for significant funding items for the county. Although I say these earmark appropriations processes are subject to some very stringent requirements in the federal bills that they can be put forth under. The two projects that we are seeking to request earmark funding to support, the first is related to the construction of the Millington wastewater treatment plant, where we are seeking to relocate that plant from its current location in the town of Millington to a Kent County parcel of land that will allow us to replace that outdated facility and expand capacity, which will benefit the town of Millington. The second is related to the new EMS headquarters in Chestertown. Although that construction project already has funds appropriated for it, the piece of the project that does not is related to the purchase and installation of an emergency power generator, which would greatly benefit the facility, and so are asking for, hoping to request and receive earmark funds to support that piece of the project as well. I will note, subject to the requirements under those different bills for the Millington wastewater treatment plant, that one is subject to a 25% cost share for the county. And I think that is all I have to say about those projects. If there are specific questions about the projects themselves or those construction details, I think that's where I'll refer over to my co-sponsor from Public Works to give those details if there are any questions on those.
Well, I'll be honest with you, I actually took the time to read that whole application. I thought it was very well put together and explained the project in detail, and I thought it was a good job.
All credit to that goes to Ms. McNamara over here. I will just expand on what she said. So to be clear, there are two separate applications that are being made, each to the two to the senators, two to Representative Harris. They are the same two applications going to each. We're trying both avenues with each. We've coordinated with the office of Senator Van Hollen as well as the office of Congressman Harris prior to completing these applications. Joanne mentioned the cost shares. Yes, it's I believe 25% county match for the Millington wastewater treatment plant. The amount we're applying for is the full cost of the plant.
Right.
We have no promise that we can get it, but
Correct.
we were advised put in for what you need, and maybe we don't get all, but we get some, which would obviously be better than nothing.
There's a guarantee you won't get it if you don't ask for it.
Exactly.
That is also correct.
The backup generator for EMS has a 65% county match, but again, it's something that wasn't included in the initial bid. We've always envisioned it would be a need for the facility. The facility is being made so that it can easily be incorporated when that is purchased. And so, yes, it's been a collaborative effort led by Joanne, and we are excited to put those in by their deadline this Friday.
So the electrician for the new EMS building is aware that we're trying to get a generator, and they'll do it, I mean, are they gonna do a disconnect and such now?
Automatic transfer switch, yes, yes. It should be designed to be plug and play,
Okay,
basically,
that's
yes.
good. Just a little easier while everything's open.
Absolutely.
Then, any other questions? Then I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve submission of the applications to the Maryland Senators, Van Hollen and also Brooks, and to Congressman Harris for a federal earmark appropriations request to support construction of the Millington wastewater treatment plant and to support the purchase and installation of a backup emergency generator at the new EMS headquarters on Vickers Drive.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, the ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Village of Kennedyville.
Yes, so I will provide some context before I talk about the specific agreement. I will try to be brief, so please, if there are questions, I'm happy to get into further detail. But the Village of Kennedyville, as we all know, exists in a half-constructed state currently, and it is the intent of the commissioners, per various recent meetings, to have the project purchased by a land development contractor in order to be completed. After some deliberation, it was determined that the best way to go about the sale of this project is a public bid, and a public works agreement would be drafted to be used as the basis for this bid. So the purpose of the public works agreement is to outline exactly what is required of whichever contractor would ultimately win the bid for the project. It has a list of requirements, and then there would be a bid form that says, first of all, that they agree with all of our requirements, and second of all, if they would bid an additional payment, whether it's a per lot or a project basis, on top of what we're requiring. There will likely be several criteria that go into ranking and ultimately awarding a bid. Money is obviously one of them. In addition, I know the commissioners have expressed a preference towards contractors who are able to tackle this project in a relatively quick and efficient manner, as opposed to a one lot and another year goes by, the house gets built and sold in another lot. Those are items we'll discuss at a future meeting on how we'll best rank them. But for tonight, we're talking about the actual agreement that will be used as the basis for the contractors in developing their bids for this project. So I have, in concert with Tom Yeager, put together a public works agreement. Some of the key highlights within this agreement are that there are 43 buildable lots per the current plan. Whoever, the developer that purchases this, will be required, as it's stated in the agreement right now, to purchase all allocations for those lots upfront at the time they sign this agreement. That would come at a cost to the developer of $696,000, our standard allocation fee multiplied by 43. Additionally, upon execution of the document, the contractor or developer shall pay the vacant lot fees until each lot, per lot, until the lots are connected or a period of 5 years has passed. That 5-year period was what we determined to be appropriate timeline for a number of items in this. So the 5-year period is something that should be considered. After 5 years, or if the wastewater plant has hit 85% capacity, the county would have the right to reclaim unconnected properties, reclaim the allocations for them without refund. So that certainly motivates a developer to begin connection, build the houses and begin connections quickly. It also requires the contractor to subdivide a portion of the property of one of the lots that is currently intended for the new Pump Station 2 at the Village of Kennedyville. Construction of the new Pump Station 2 is not funded by the developer, nor is it to be done by the developer. That is a county project funded by the county, specifically allocation fees we're collecting in association with this project. This PWA also requires that the developer, at the time they purchase the lots, become a member of the community's homeowners association. They have to pay all appropriate dues for all lots that they own and maintain good status with those payments. And it also requires that they transfer the membership of the HOA to the new residents as they move into the houses. It deals with all the permits that have been issued and potential revisions, ensuring that all proper county processes are followed. And it specifically outlines the infrastructure. It makes general statements that all improvements on the plans must be constructed, but we took the time to go through some of what we felt to be the most critical pieces of infrastructure and specifically outline them in here. Specifically, those are roads and utilities, conversion and construction to its final design grades of the stormwater basin in the middle of the development currently. That was constructed as a sediment trap, but never converted to its final stormwater condition. The developer would be required to do that. Installation of streetlights, as shown on the plans. I believe there's 4 or 5 throughout the neighborhood, as well as construction of a pocket park within the development that is shown on the plans. Developer is required to grant the county all easements shown on the plans, and they must dedicate all improvements within the road right-of-ways to the county. So these will become county roads upon completion of the project. I mentioned the 5-year period before. That's relevant to allocations, and they must connect within 5 years. It's also very relevant to the public improvements, the roads, the water and sewer lines, the drainage system, things of that nature. They have 5 years to complete all improvements that will be dedicated to the county. And if they do not, and they are not showing a good faith effort to complete them, the county reserves the right to complete the project themselves. That effort would be based on a 100% financial assurance in the form of a performance bond or a letter of credit. The bond or letter of credit will be based on a professional engineer's cost estimate, one who is familiar with the project. It must be submitted by the developer and approved by the Department of Public Works in concert with this agreement. So we will have the full cost of the public improvements set aside up front in case there should be an issue down the road with the developer. And after 5 years, we would have the ability to do that using those funding. There's also a 1-year maintenance bond on all public improvements, totaling 15% of that total cost that we all agree on. And various other clauses in here related to things like insurance, access, good workmanship, things of that nature. So with that said, I believe those are the highlights. Nothing I just said is set in stone, so you know, there are certain items to be considered, such as collection of the allocation fees up front, the 5-year period I mentioned a couple times, or anything else that the commissioners may wish be included. But that is as brief as I can, summary of the current agreement, and welcome any feedback from yourselves or public who may be here.
So when you put it out to bid, the bidders will be agreeing to this Public Works agreement?
This document will be included in the bid package.
Plus the figure?
Yes. Potential, we can't predict. They may put 0 down.
Right, yes.
but yeah, they would have the opportunity to make their bid potentially more competitive by virtue of additional payment,
So
although.
really what we're looking for tonight is whether we agree and whether we want to move forward with that, putting this out.
Yes, if this document in its current condition is appropriate for use in the advertisement.
The contractor would be expected to enter into an agreement with us in substantially the same form as this. There would have to be some details put in this, but these would be the things that the contractor would have, or the developer would have to agree to.
Yes, the project specifications, basically, yes.
Any questions?
No, I don't have any.
No, not at this time. I think it's,
Well, we have some questions in the back here. I guess
And Tom,
we go-
are we allowed to go to public comment and come back? or is
It's not
this-
there yet.
Call
We're not-
the commissioners.
We're not to public comment yet. You'll be welcome to comment when we get there, but
One of the things we did by coming up with this document is to avoid the situation that we were in before, where we want to make sure the infrastructure is put in, and whoever the developer is has put up bonds and sureties, so if for some reason they're not able to complete the development, there's money there for us to go ahead and get the job done. But we want to see somebody come in there and be able to develop it and get these houses built, rather than having one house here, one house there. We want to get the job finished.
And to that point, we can't reasonably enforce the construction of houses. What we can enforce is all of the improvements that will be dedicated to the county. So that is what we have tied to the 5-year period that will be constructed via their bonds if they do not make good faith efforts to meet our deadlines.
Because if you put the houses in without the improvements in the infrastructure, that's problematic, and then that becomes an added expense for us. So the idea is to get a developer in there that's serious and has the wherewithal to do this, and they get all the infrastructure in.
Yes.
And that's the important part to us. Once that's in, they can build the houses as slow or as fast as they want, essentially, but they do run the risk of losing allocations if they don't.
Exactly, yes.
and you've looked it over, and I mean, you like this agreement?
I drafted it, yes, yes.
And Tom, you've give it the legal eye?
Yes,
And you're-
yeah, Dan drafted it, I provided him with some samples of some things that have worked in some other places, and then Dan used his knowledge, and I thought he did a great job putting this together. It's a good document, it reads nice and smooth, and Mike Moles has also reviewed it. Mike had some suggestions, and we incorporated Mike's suggestions into this document too, so we think we have something that's workable.
Okay. Now, there's some people, if there's anyone here that wants to speak about this Kennedyville project, good, we ought to do it now while our attorney and all is still here in case we need to have some questions.
before he starts, when I read through this document, it appeared to me that at some point, the county's going to require the developer, whoever that may be, to basically build similar type homes that are already in place up there. I think it was called Site, Tom,
The HOA should have some discretion on what homes are building in there.
Well, I think what we were looking at is there were already plans that were approved for this.
Right.
So we're saying is, if you're gonna build it pursuant to the plans that are already in existence, that are already approved, this is what we're gonna do. If you wanna come in here and completely change the concept, then you pretty much have to start from scratch.
And do it all under the 5-year clock.
Right. The idea is to get the development done.
Yes.
Okay. Sir, you want to give your name and tell us who you are? And
David Drury, have property there.
okay.
Down in number 8, item F, repair of any newly or previously constructed infrastructure shown on phase one. Is that including stormwater issues?
Yes, that would include stormwater and roadway, things like that, that
Are there going to be itemized, will that be something that we can see that's in that plan? Or you just take the contractor's word? Because the previous contractor failed miserably.
When you say, will that be itemized or take the contractor's word?
I think he's probably saying, are you gonna clean the pond out, or are you gonna put,
Well,
there was some street lights that were promised up there that I don't think you've ever gotten yet.
Yeah, and I've got, one of the homes I have is a waterfront home, but it's in the back of the house and it's on my driveway. Because it wasn't properly.
Told us that, we're gonna raise your taxes now.
Yeah. It wasn't properly graded, or the sewer tops, I don't know, and there's sinkholes. The county has come out and done several reviews, but it really hasn't corrected the problem. We covered the problem, we filled the sinkhole, but over time, it's gonna have the same issues. And I was just wondering how that is in this program.
I would find it hard to believe that the new, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but that the new contractor would be responsible for work that was done in the past, but that's not to say.
That's how this reads.
Huh?
It reads that way.
What, like what I just said?
It reads that they are
They're
responsible.
saying that they will be responsible.
Yes, sir.
I think it's with
Well, that's even better
infrastructure
then.
that's common to the
That's
development,
why
not
I'm-
necessarily something on a particular lot.
Right.
No, this is, well, a lot of the houses, that's immaterial, flood because it wasn't properly done.
Yeah, I don't think this is intended to say the new developer's gonna come in and do grading on lots that have been sold. But it's more to the common areas or, the streets, stormwater management pond, utility easements, things like that, that are common to the development.
With respect to that, if there's only one stormwater pond, which goes through phase one, how are they gonna prevent having more issues rather than?
I'm gonna defer to the Public
project.
Works Director on that.
The project was designed in a two-phase construction and permitted that way. I expect the majority of soil erosion measures to be handled on a on-lot or per-lot type basis when they're building the houses.
The new lots.
The new lots, to prevent that from coming down. But obviously, there are roadway and underground pipe installations as well. The contractor will be required per things like the soil erosion permitting, they would need to reobtain. They would need to submit a soil erosion plan that complies with all the current standards for their work area. So there's a clause in here about the permitting that they shall maintain any permits that are still active or obtain new permits when those have expired, which I would expect the soil erosion to have been expired by now. So they would need to put together a plan as part of this and get that approved by the County Soil Conservation District. I'll also note too, something you said before about, documenting what is wrong, what gets damaged, things like that with what's out there. Clause 27 does state that all improvements referred to in this agreement shall be completed and then inspected and approved by the county's Director of Public Works. So they would need my approval on the list of items as well as the remedies and completion of construction of those remedies.
Again, respect, I assume that was the condition for the first phase, and it was, the engineering was suspect, as proven.
From what we've been told, the bonds were not, they didn't bond it properly, is what.
They didn't put up bonds.
They didn't put up bonds.
Okay, so
This
they-
guy's gonna be, or guy, gal, whoever, we're gonna have the bonds this time.
Last thing, the problem with the soil is really the drive, the roadway. there's nothing to deter the water from coming down to its lowest point, my driveway, and it doesn't go anywhere. So with more driveways, it's going to lead, I would suspect, to more water coming down. So unless it's identified, there would never be a goal to fix that. And also, one last, your 1-year warranty phase, is that per completion of home or completion of the 5-year contract?
That would be that would take effect upon the dedication of the public infrastructure to the county. The county would not enforce a 1-year warranty on the homes. But for the roads, the utility lines, the pond conversion, any new drainage put in, there would be a 1-year clock that starts upon dedication of those features to the county.
No, it's nothing to do with construction.
During construction, they own it completely until we accept it, and at which point we accept it, then there's a 1-year clock. Yep.
Thank you.
To your comment on stormwater, I will note that the issue with the pond and pushing that onto the developer, that was done with the understanding in mind that there are different stormwater regulations in place today than when this was originally designed. They will need to meet the current standards for the areas they disturb. That may involve reshaping or expanding that pond a little bit to be able to manage more stormwater. That's the reason that's included in there, but also to the uphill areas, they would all need to be designed per current stormwater guidance.
Well, how does that phase 2 stormwater get to that that pond?
That would be the developer's engineer. Yep.
That's the biggest question. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. How are you?
I'm okay, how are you guys?
Good.
Christina Herman, I think you guys know me already. I only had a quick question, and I don't know if maybe I missed it, because I'm a little not with it, but what I was hoping to find out is it possible to consider moving some of the things that were part of phase 1 that were supposed to be complete at the end of phase 1 a little ahead in the timeline so that it doesn't take the full 5 years, i.e. the street lights, cleaning up the pond. In the end, in my mind, that will help sell the homes that are in phase 2. And a lot of the residents have waited a very long time for those things to be completed, and I would hate to see them get pushed to the end of the project. And just pretty much asking it, can we consider that?
And I believe we talked about that, and one of the holdups was getting those roads turned over to the county, wasn't it? That was one of the holdups, but there's is there anything preventing us now from saying putting up the streetlights?
I don't think, it's not currently in the agreement. I don't see a reason it couldn't be added with a shorter clock on it.
We could add that.
Yep.
I mean, we've actually talked about that in a years past. I mean, it's, I think we personally, I think we owe them that much, to at least get the streetlights put in place.
And my only,
because it's not that many, it's only,
It's really not that many in
Four.
phase 1. I think there's maybe 2 in phase 1, and then I think the rest go up into phase 2. But obviously, if you're going to put in the infrastructure for them and they're working on it, they may want to do them all, which is fine. I just, a lot of people have been there a long time waiting for that portion to be completed, and it would honestly help sell the homes in phase 2, to have those things look the way they were meant to look.
We've had the street since 2023, so we've had them a while now, but.
yeah, specific to the streetlights, it will not be an issue to make a separate clause in here specific to them with a 1-year window on it.
I think that would help.
Yeah.
I would hesitate to put 1 year on the stormwater basin only because that may be subject to re-engineering in order to meet requirements. it might not be unreasonable to say 2 years to give them time to do the engineering and get the permits, but we can certainly go, I think, reasonably small, shorter than the 5 years I had mentioned for those two items.
How do you build it?
Okay.
Get the stormwater.
You gotta come back up, Dave.
He just asked how you build, before you get the stormwater. Yeah? Okay,
Stormwater issues first.
yeah.
Wouldn't that be step one?
Well, it's gonna be partially I mean, there's, in construction, you can't complete the stormwater and then run over all your ditches and your terraces as you're constructing, so that's when silt fence comes in effect and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I think that if you're doing, and I'm familiar with the development, I mean, I think there could be phases that maybe you could, but to complete your stormwater is gonna be one of the last things, to have it complete is gonna be one of the last things to do, I would say. I'm not the developer, don't want to be. So.
Understood.
I've gone back and forth in my mind on the issue. I do think that the stormwater pond, as I mentioned, may be subject to re-engineering and some improvements. It may be a pocket of disturbance in the project. I don't expect any other disturbance that would want to utilize that as a sediment basin as it currently
Phase
is.
one, right.
Yeah,
But
because
they're
phase
talking
two,
about
we don't
phase
want that,
two.
yeah, we don't want that sediment rolling down the street and getting to the pond and saying that's okay.
Right.
No, that would never be approved in the permit, yes, so.
The only other question I had, and maybe again I missed it, is there anything in the agreement that states how they would need to maintain the pond in the time frame that they're building before the HOA were to take it back over? Basically to make sure that it's not gonna get overgrown and out of hand again. Because the county has thankfully been taking care of it all this time, but if in this process they end up taking over that space, maybe some sort of language making sure that it is maintained in a proper way for the residents that live there. That would be my only other suggestion at the moment.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So, I'm sorry.
Dave Sproats. I live in the village. The only thing I want to add to the lighting, as you all know, we had a fire 150 yards from our house, okay? That was an arson fire due to no lighting, okay? And it may or may not help this lighting, but we would like it speeded up if we could. That's it.
Thank you very much. Anyone else that wants to speak about this project?
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
Or evening, sorry about that.
Yeah.
I'm Janet Carter, I'm also a resident of the Village of Kennedyville. So I think what I was hearing back there is that after you approve this process and you go forward, the next step would be to put it out for bids for developers who will come to finish. My question would be, because there were plans, this was a planned community and there were several phases and things were coming in, the look of the community, there was especially to be some mixed-use homes, which we know that start out with duplexes and now they're all single families. Is that still part of the plan? Is it to have some mixed-use homes in there or to continue with single-family housing? And also, there were some, in the HOA agreement, there were amendments to say that the homes need to look a certain way. And I think they'd named them cottage style or whatever it is. Is that going to be part of the requirement to have the developer to continue with that process, or could they come in with their entirely different plan?
That's a good question.
And
That's
then
in
go
the
back
HOA.
to
That's
planning
in
and
the
zoning
HOA?
again?
That's in the HOA now?
Yeah.
Then it would take an
But there's been about, at least I know, at least 3 amendments to the original. But it just seemed like that when we had previous developers, plans were approved, but they weren't consistent with what the original concept was going to be. So I didn't know if there was any discussion about how do you, or can you even enforce that?
I think the HOA is what is going to drive that, Janet, would be my.
But wouldn't they have the majority once they get the 43 lots?
Yeah, the developer would have the majority of the votes in the HOA.
Yeah, but then it takes, it's not just a majority to change the HOA, is it?
Usually it's 2/3, I think, that they typically require in these, but as I understand it, right now, there are plans that were approved for this development. And I believe those plans are single-family houses, because the original plan, the duplexes, that was changed to single-family houses. So and Dan, feel free to jump in here if I'm wrong, but what I believe is we're acting on an assumption that the developer is gonna take the existing plans and is gonna build those out, because the developer wouldn't have to incur the engineering cost to completely reconfigure the part of the development that hasn't been done yet. So we're doing this with an assumption that this agreement is based on the developer taking the already approved plans and building out. If the developer says, I want the land, but I don't want to develop it as per the plans that were approved, I want to do something else, that developer is going to basically have to start at square one, do the engineering, do the plans, go to the planning commission, and get a whole bunch of approvals.
Yes. At the risk of what we've mentioned with the bonding and the allocations.
Correct. It's a much more expensive proposition for the developer.
But not outside of the realm of possibility if you had a
It could-
developer that wanted to do it that way?
Yeah, it could be done. If a developer comes in and looks at the plans and says, you know, I think this is a good location, I like this land, I want to build here, but I don't like these plans, I think I could do something that's more cost-effective for me, or it's better for me, that developer then would have to basically do a brand-new site plan and configure the rest of the development how they want it. Not saying it couldn't be done, I'm just thinking that the developer wouldn't want to spend that money to do that up
I
front.
don't mean to interrupt, but wouldn't those questions be answered before that person was awarded a bid?
Yeah, because they're
Because
not
we-
gonna want to enter into this agreement if they want to do something different. So they would have to do a proposal to us showing what they want. So the answer to your
I don't
question
know
is
that
yes.
they're gonna be able to change it. I mean, you've got a pretty, you've stated in here that they have to.
Right. It would be, in theory, it could be done. I don't think it's likely to be done. I don't see a developer, the value is you already have plans that are approved. And that's a value to a developer, because there's a whole bunch of hoops and steps that they don't have to go through.
But we also need to, what can go wrong will go wrong, and it's not good, I mean, we're sitting up here, it's gonna affect these people that have homes. So, I mean, we wanna try to make this as ironclad as we can
Yeah.
for them, in my opinion. But I think that, you know, with them saying that they have to finish out the roads like they have to finish out, I mean, there's only so much that they can change. And then I would recommend going back to the HOA and see what it would take. I haven't read your particular HOA, but see what it would take, as far as them to hold the majority. I mean, as long as you guys could,
I will say, if one developer purchases all those lots in the beginning, before they start really moving forward, they will own the majority vote in the way it's worded right now. So ultimately, if they decided they wanted to do something that wasn't in the best interest of all the homes that are currently there, they would have that vote right in their use.
So that we would have to make sure that these things are ironed out prior to awarding the bid when.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have kind of a vision for what we want there, and we have the right, we can put this in here, we have the right to reject any and all bids and rebid it if we want. So if we get proposals that we don't think are satisfactory or they're not accomplishing what we want to accomplish, we don't have to pick the lesser of the evils. We can just reject everything and start over again if we want. And that's fairly standard that we put in a clause saying we can reject any and all bids.
And this bid would be what we call a qualitative bid as opposed to a quantitative bid. It would not be based on simply who's giving us the best price. it would be a number of factors that we agree on ahead of time. And I think it's likely that, should we get the interest we hope to, we'll probably have an interview process, a short list interview process with developers. And if they had intentions of making significant changes, any reasonable developer would bring them up to us at that time.
Right, I mean,
Before
they're
they
not
make the
gonna commit
payments.
the money
Yes,
without having an idea that what they wanna do is gonna work.
yes.
Well, you just, what is reasonable, Dan, that's, I mean, that, well. yeah,
Given the
yeah,
history
don't
of
you
this
know,
pro-
not
given the
you,
history of this
We don't need an
property.
attorney, definition. I'm just teasing.
Sometimes you do, but, no, I hear, I think Dan's worked really hard to try to, you know, have these safeguards in place, so we don't have unintended consequences. And we get the priority here is to get this infrastructure in, because that benefits the houses that are already there.
Absolutely.
So we want to get the development built, but we also want to take care of the people that are already there, so they get what they thought they were going to get. And I think Dan came up with a good plan, a good agreement. But again, if we have developers that aren't interested in doing this and nothing's really responsive to this, we don't have to settle for what we get. We can just reject everything, start over again, until we get what we want.
Well, thank you, I appreciate your time. I don't envy you trying to iron all this out, but I speak for, I think, some of the residents in the community that we appreciate what you've done so far, and we're looking forward to working with you in partnership to kind of get this moving. So thank you.
Janet. Nice to see you
You
too,
too.
again.
Thank you.
So, any other questions?
No.
Then I'll entertain a motion.
Well, I think we've heard some concerns. I know Dan's been making some notes. So with that being said, I'd like to make a motion to approve the language with the amendments maybe that should be included, that Dan has noted, of the Village of Candyville Public Works Agreement as presented for use in an advertisement soliciting development proposals for completion of the project.
Second. Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Listen, I was presented with an idea, actually, to try to get the word out a little bit at the end of each meeting, and we're gonna try to talk, just go over a few things, but, so that they can be printed in a newspaper and stuff, so people constantly get a little bit of an update maybe on how some of these projects are moving forward. Carla, one of the things, we had and Tom, you and Carla, there's this hold harmless agreement that we sort of came from Little Neck Farms development about a pier that they couldn't use because of this new law about a certain part, an electrical part, that nobody's been able to get one. I mean, those people are starting to get nervous about, good weather coming, they were gonna wanna use their pier. So we kind of agreed about this hold harmless agreement. Where is that thing, if you know?
So I believe Mr. Yeager has kind of worked on the side of the document between you and the homeowners association.
Correct. I finalized it. It went to the clerk's office, and I think it's being sent out to Little Neck Farms.
As far as trying to get a response from MDIA it's for, kind of the inspection side of things, we've not been able to get anybody there to.
I'm not sure I personally care, to be honest with you. And with a case like this, that's just a little bit of, you need a little common sense to figure this out. I mean, you can't, because they passed a law that you have to now have, up until 6 months ago, they're legal. But now, because of this one little piece that goes in this electrical panel, they can't use something, but yet, they can't buy one because they don't mass produce them. I think, I don't really care. I mean, as a matter of fact, MDIA is the one that, Aaron Spector, I believe, is the one that brought up the idea of the hold harmless agreement. I think.
That I don't know.
Well, I can't
But-
remember either, but, you know, I can't foresee us holding this community pier up this summer because they've tried everything to get this.
Right.
I guess it's an extra fuse or something that goes in there that's never been needed before, but all of a sudden needs to be in there now. So I don't know how my colleagues feel, but I think I believe we talked about it once, we were willing to go forward with a hold harmless agreement, and that's been a month or two ago.
Right, and I think that that's probably a legal opinion as to whether or not the hold harmless agreement can just be between you and the homeowners association, or if the inspection agency also needs to be on board.
I just took the position that it's between us and the homeowners association, because they would be indemnifying and holding us harmless. So an agreement has been prepared in that regard. It's unfortunate that the state just can't grandfather these piers in, because to me, that's the simple solution. You just say, if it was non-conforming at the time, or if it was conforming at the time you changed the law, it's still conforming, you know, or you allow it as a non-conforming use, but I don't make those decisions.
And it's really not all those of you that worked on it's fault, because there was a period of time when all of the people in the homeowners association wasn't on board with doing it because they were afraid if they did that and something did happen, that their insurance company wouldn't cover it or something. But evidently, they've went back and got that ironed out, and now they're ready to sign it.
Yeah, and I just, you know, you had a good point, Commissioner, because a hold harmless agreement is only worth anything if the party agreeing to it has funds available to reimburse us if there's a claim against us, and insurance would cover that. So if they have insurance that covers that, they just need to show us the proof of that insurance, and we're good. But we have the agreement all ready to go and prepared. So if they can just sign it, show us proof of insurance, then you can sign off on it, and we're good.
Would you follow up on that for us,
I
Carla?
will, yes. I'll
Contact them, that group, and
Yep, I will coordinate with the clerk's office and with the homeowners association, and we'll see if we can't get that moving.
is okay, everybody, you all right?
I'd be curious to see what the limit is on the insurance. Well, I guess we'll see that once we see.
We'll find out
their
when we
agreement.
get it. I imagine there's one limit for total coverage and one per incident. You know, it's always a risk, you know, you take, but you look at it as, well, is the risk all that great something's gonna happen at something like this? Probably not, but you still wanna have insurance to cover it. And if, you know, as long as they have something that's reasonable, I would recommend we just go forward.
And you'll look into that?
Well, if we can't get
Okay, thank you. Just reporting out on that senior housing project that's in Millington. Of course, we put some money, gave the property, it's the old school property there. It's under construction now, and then the amount of money that we put into it is just for the horizontal work, like the water and sewer, the roads, the electric line, and I think they've started construction a week or two ago. So if you get a chance to ride up there, you might. And that's by the way, I think it's 54 unit senior housing project, which is probably one of the bigger projects we've done in this county for a while. And I think I don't know, I think it's like $18 or $20 million project. It's a big project. Our EMS building out here, Vickers Drive, is, Sheriff said you went by there, putting a roof on it, coming along.
Coming along.
Good. Bayside Public Landing, that project's underway. They've tore out all of the existing piers, and now I guess we're waiting on the
Yes, the material has been ordered. We expect it within the coming days. There will be a test pile likely this Thursday that will be inspected by myself and the project engineer. I expect by next week to see piles going in at 25 to 30 piles a day. So next week, it hasn't looked like much has happened out there for a while, and I can appreciate concern related to that
Right, yeah.
appearance. But
especially when you get some good weather and see nothing going, then they kind of wonder what's going on.
Exactly. But no, I think that starting next week, you will see a significant progress throughout the area with the
And it
piles
was
being.
supposed to be done by the end of March, but I understand they're probably able to get a couple-week
Yes.
extension because of the cold weather and stuff, so middle of April.
Yes, that is what we're tracking towards for completion right now. There were some entire days lost just breaking up ice in that area. I think one of their pieces of equipment went down trying to break up some of the ice when they were doing the demolition. So yeah, I'd say we're about 6 weeks from now.
Another thing, last Friday, Commissioner Nickerson and myself went to the solar power hearing in Annapolis. We left here at 10 o'clock, I got home around 7:30. It's never a short adventure when you go to Annapolis for a 2-minute testimony. You have any opinions of how you think that went, Albert?
Well, for a 2-minute testimony that we didn't even get our 2 minutes.
Right.
But that's never, neither here nor there, I guess, at this point in time. But I think that it's a pretty pre-drawn conclusion which way this bill is going to go. And I am not opposed to solar. I think that there are some ways to do it. But personally, I don't think that covering productive ag land is the way to do it. All kinds of points were brought up, even though we didn't get to speak. Really, everything that we were going to say was brought up in the 2 to 3 hours of testimony, I would say.
And they also kept referring to some amendments that were
Right.
being worked on that we weren't privy to see and nobody else was. They, I guess, haven't ironed that all out yet.
It doesn't look like it, but Mako has really been on top of this from the inception, it looks like, and it looks like they are coming up with some concessions. I don't know that we know exactly what they are ironclad yet, but I mean, personally, I think that the bill will move forward, but it will have it'll have amendments.
And today was the hearing on the school construction, though.
In the Senate.
The bill that that the delegates have put in is at our request was right now, 19,500 people living in Kent County. If we build a new school, they're responsible for 50%. We're responsible for 50% of the cost. And if you're talking about a $80 or $90 million school, that's quite a challenge for. So the bill is to try to get a percentage, something less than 50%. And that's done all the time. As a matter of fact, there was 2 counties that if they went to build a new school, it wouldn't cost them anything. The state would pay for it. And then there's some that pay 30%. There's some that pay 20%. If they build one in Baltimore City's residents have to pay 7%. But we are, with all the farmland, we're considered a wealthy county. I would argue that, but nevertheless, we're at a 50-50 split, so they're trying to get that down, and nobody, I understand that a lot of people on the committee, from what I hear, are working to help us, but we don't know what that percentage is or if anything, so we'll just have to wait and see. But that was, we did, that was, the testimony was today.
I think last year, just so that the public knows, last year, I think, we were sitting here and we were, as commissioners, and I don't know that we necessarily took a vote on it, but we were somewhere at around, our drop dead number was around 15% that we thought that we could burden the taxpayers with. So, I mean, we haven't discussed it really this year on record, but, I mean, I think that I don't think that the county is in any shape to do anything more than 15% of the cost of this school.
Especially with what else is coming down the path that we know about, and then there's a lot more that we don't know about that's getting ready to, I mean, obviously the state's got their financial issues, and generally speaking, they have a tendency to send some of it down to, as much as they can, down to the counties. So we'll have to wait and see. Last Sunday, the three of us attended a 4-H banquet in Betterton Fire Hall, and I tell you, Beth Hill is a lady that runs that. They have something like 130 some people that belong to that, she told me. And I tell you, she does, speaking for myself, I just like to say she just does an outstanding job. It's very, very impressive what she has those young people doing. It's really worth going to those banquets. That's one thing I try not to miss. I really enjoy that. And then last but not least, the work at the courthouse. Sheriff, did you have a chance to
I have
stop?
not had a chance.
I haven't
It
either.
looks good. I toured today. It looks really good. You walk in there, it's brighter. They put some new flooring in. It's not congested in there. There's room for the security officers to get around, and it adds a little more room for people going to the window at District Court to do business there. So I've been in the courthouse twice this week, and as soon as I walked in there, it caught my attention. So they did a nice job.
And it's complete now, I think,
It
right?
looks complete to me.
The project is substantially complete. There will be a punch list inspection tomorrow with our architect and the contractor to identify the final remaining cleanup items, but yes, substantially complete.
You remember what the price tag of that was?
I believe it was in the neighborhood of $55,000.
It was right there in the foyer, the entrance to the courthouse. Very good. Okay, public comment, media review. Got a list, do we have?
This gentleman already spoke about the Village of Kenny, so you have 3.
Mr. Dave Foster.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I really want to thank all of you. I'm convinced that the meeting we had on February 11th, plus Commissioner Price's attendance in our workshop, Pat Merritt's presentation today, represents by far the most productive discussions we have had on this issue, not only in the 7 years I've been involved with it, but I believe also under Mayor Serino and Mayor Bailey. I also believe this was kind of what the legislature envisioned when they put in the requirement for a discussion, not just a presentation, but an open exchange of ideas. And so I really appreciate your following through on the spirit. I also, just a slight diversion here moment, really want to commend you, Superintendent McComas, Trish McGee from the school board and all of your efforts on the help for trying to secure funding for middle school. I agree with Mr. Nickerson. I don't see any way that the county can afford to pay get by without a substantial increase in state funding. Kind of inspired by your hard work on this, I think I threw the longest Hail Mary pass I've ever done in my life. I went through the list of people on the committee. I said, oh, I recognize that name. And it was Jim Rosapep, the vice chair of this committee. However, I last talked with him 25 years ago when he was ambassador to Romania and I was working there. I knew, however, that he's passionate about education, and particularly education for the underprivileged. And I thought, well, I'll give it a try. I'll send him a personal note, see if he remembers me, and see what happens. And to my amazement, he wrote back immediately. He suggested we talk by phone. He called me Sunday night. We talked about 10, 15 minutes. He asked me to send my regards, Commissioner Fithian, to you. I remember when you all had been working together on something. This is a Democrat who was commending Commissioner Fithian, Senator Hershey, and Delegate Christ for the work on this. And I tried to make the very best case as to why the special needs of Kent County and why it made sense to amend the formula for this. And as we left the conversation, he said, tell Commissioner Fithian, tell Senator Hershey that I will do what I can to support this. I have no idea whether it's going to go beyond that, but I came away saying, if somebody asks you to write a letter of support, maybe sometimes it opens up some communication, and it's an anecdote worth sharing. I think another thing impressive about that whole effort, it really has been nonpartisan. It hadn't mattered whether somebody lived in a town or lived out of town. We were all working together on it, and I hope that leads to success. And I hope it also carries a message that we can work together on a variety of issues. This is not a zero-sum game on the things we're talking about with regard to tax differential or rebate. For every additional dollar that Chestertown gets through it, enhanced growth, Kent County gets $2. For every additional dollar we get in income tax, Kent County gets $4, a little more. When we win, you win. When we lose, you lose, big time. You lose more than we do. If the fact that we are taxing our towns higher than any other town, any other county taxes towns in Maryland, unfortunately that puts a bullseye right on our backs. The fact that anybody out there, we love Chestertown, but if you're a developer and you come in and you see that the tax that Kent County imposes on Chestertown is 46% higher than the county imposed on Centerville, just across the river, that kind of tells them something. And unfortunately, I think it tells them that look somewhere else. And it's not just Queen Anne's. The same thing is true in the other counties, counties far poorer than us. Somerset, Caroline, we have one of the worst economic growth rates in the entire state. And issues such as this new school and issues such as the blueprint are going to keep coming at us. And unless we can work together to develop that tax base, we're going to continue to be in trouble. I want to come back just one moment to the sheet that Pat talked about in terms of the increase in assessed value. And I appreciate kind of popping the balloon a little bit, because it's not going to be this 20% growth all together. You know, it's going to be phased in. But in addition to that, if you look at that same sheet where it shows 20% increase in values of residential properties, do you know what it had for commercial properties? 4.1%. Now, why is that? And that's the second lowest in the state for increase in commercial properties. Now, when you and I and our wives look for residences, hey, the guy may be saying, hey, that's a swell kitchen and this is the place for me. And his wife may be saying, hey, a place by the river and that's the place for me. And they don't focus on the property tax. But I assure you a business person does. And they're telling us something. They're telling us, hey, beware of investing in Kent County. Okay? That 4.1% was second lowest, I think, to Somerset County, which had 2.1%. We can do better than that. Guys, we are in a competition. They're our friends, but we're in a competition. And some of us are still in the locker room getting our tennies on. We've got to be able to compete in every way possible. I'm going to urge you, talk to the Commerce Department and ask them if having the highest taxes on municipalities has an adverse impact on our ability to build that tax base. Okay? From me, you're going to say I'm biased, but you can ask Department of Commerce, you can ask almost any economist out there, and they'll say, hey, that's a concern. It may not be the only factor, but it's a significant factor. I appreciate very much the analysis that Pat has done for us. We, of course, still don't have the documents, but when we get them, we look forward to being able to go through that. I appreciate the fact that she went through that report, but all of you know, we submitted that report almost 12 months ago. We need to be able to speed up that process just a little bit. Okay. One point that from a takeaway from yours, you pointed out that work that Jamie Williams and others on economic development, that 90% of that is focused on municipalities. And frankly, that's what I've been saying and what Anirban Basu has been saying. It's the municipalities where the economic growth is most likely to occur. Those are the engines of economic development. Those are the areas that you all picked as priority funding areas. And yet things have gotten turned around. They have become priority taxing areas. And I think we've got to sit down and address that problem. I appreciated very much Commissioner Price's suggestion a few weeks ago about setting up a committee to go through this. I think that's highly appropriate for this. I look forward to the establishment of such a committee where we can all sit down, not in an adversarial focus, but to say, folks, Kent County and Chestertown have a problem. Let's see how we can work together to solve that. So I thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Michael McDowell.
So the mayor has summarized things very well. I have a particularly important technical question. The document that you have submitted, we're only hearing about now. And in terms of goodwill and transparency, it would have been helpful to see the document beforehand. Not necessarily to have you vote on it, but to have us look at it. Because I certainly, with an economic background and with a think tank and the World Bank behind me, I'm not reading something and making a conclusion on it within a few minutes. I want to see the document. I didn't see enough figures in the document. I appreciate what Pat has done. But I would say to you that in order to create good faith with the community, because there's significant interest here, that it's important that you give us the information in good time, and that is not in good time. If this was a court case, I'm looking at Mr. Yeager here, if a judge looked across at the defense or the prosecution and said, one of them said, I don't have this document, the judge would look at it very negatively. And we should have the document in good time. It's local democracy, you work for us, let's see it. The second thing is, we've now tried, this was February the 11th was the last time we had a meeting here. So let's try and move with some deliberate speed here. So we've got the document now, but I would like to hear from each of you as commissioners as to when we can meet as two groups or a committee And I'm asking you now, that's my question to all three of you, when? Because I thought we would hear from you, and the mayor was expecting it before now. So what is your answer to the question? Mr. Price, you and I have talked before. Can you please respond to my question?
Well, the first question that you had was about the document that we voted on to sign. That document is a letter addressed to each one of the mayors here in the county, outlining the tax differential, tax set-offs, as we have, actually researched that. And until we send that out to our honorable mayors here in the county, it doesn't become a public document. And it will become a public document, but it's not going to become a public document tonight. Regarding a meeting in the form of a committee, I don't know that there's an appetite for this board, and I don't want to speak for my colleagues, to actually have a committee or commission, whatever you want to call it, appointed by the county commissioners. I think it would serve the community a lot better if there was an independent group that provided oversight of this committee. And I know that there's an interested group here in the county that I'm not willing to say at this point, that I've met with, that is willing to engage with the town of Chestertown, with the commissioners. Obviously, only one of us could attend that meeting at a time, because if not, we would have a quorum. So it's kind of premature to even talk about that at this point, but we have had conversations. I've had conversations with this other group, and they have a desire to head this up. Last time I spoke with them, which was probably a week to 10 days ago. I also provided them with some email contacts of some of the folks that have expressed interest to participate in the committee.
That was it's 3 weeks ago, since February the 11th. So I know on our part.
September 11th is a lot more than 3 weeks. You mean February 11th?
Yeah, February 11th. It's 3 weeks. So we are ready to do that. But what I'm saying is there's some urgency to having this done. The community is very interested.
I thought it was important that we, number one, that we fulfill what we said we were going to do, which was ask Pat to do some research for us. And Pat did that, and she presented some of the slides here tonight. The information that the mayors are getting, I would say, is a little more detailed and provides some explanation on where the county stands on certain issues. But the key thing at the end of that letter, and I don't mind sharing this because it's just the way it is that we invite the mayors or their councils to participate in a further discussion. The mayor represents the citizens of Chestertown. We represent all the citizens here in the county. And so that's why it's important to have public comment, so we can hear from our citizens on what they want their elected officials to present. So I think I've answered your questions to the best of my ability. You may not be satisfied with my answers, but I've tried.
Okay, I appreciate your answer. I don't necessarily share your view completely. I think there needs to be more speed attached. Mr. Nickerson, can you please comment on the question?
We haven't discussed it.
So you have no comment on my question?
My question is we haven't discussed setting up this commission or this committee as a group.
Well, it's not simply your committee. we're equal partners in this, the town and the
If we're
council.
gonna be involved with the committee, then I think, I mean, I'm not gonna answer for the entire commission. We'll
I'm not,
talk about
can
that.
you answer for yourself?
Answer for what? You wanna know when we're gonna have the meeting?
I'm suggesting to you that we need to move with some speed. It's 3 weeks since February the 11th. What
Okay.
we've got is a document which we've only seen tonight. We can't analyze it without looking at it.
Well, I guess, I don't think that any answer that I give you is gonna be what you wanna hear.
Yes, well, you must not put words into my mouth. I haven't made that assumption yet. You're saying that. That's hearsay. And
The
Mr.
other thing I
Fitzgerald,
will-
Well,
And
it's
I don't
not
mean to
hearsay.
interrupt, but
It's
the
not
other
hearsay.
thing that I
It's
want
not
to
hearsay at all.
make clear.
I made an opinion, I'm sorry, go ahead.
The other thing that I want to make clear is that any one of the three of us can decide to have their own committee by themselves. I don't need Ronnie's permission or Albert's permission, and they don't need mine. And this particular group that I'm talking about, I think they're a very reputable group of folks who care an awful lot about Kent County as well as Chestertown. So I mean, it's kind of unfair to, I think it's a better way of doing it, because they're gonna decide who's gonna serve on this committee, and obviously Mayor Foster would be part of that group. And who else is gonna serve, we need to talk about that. As you well know, anytime that you form a committee and you get too many people involved in it, nothing happens. In a lot of cases.
yes, I'm quite aware of that.
So-
And I would suggest that we have our act together already in terms of a number of people who would serve on it with Mayor Foster.
Well, I
And
guess
it wouldn't be many, it might be 3 or 4.
That's up to the group that I'm talking about, and up to the mayor and I, as elected officials, to maybe spearhead that, but, I'm fine with serving with this other group individually. I'm not gonna speak for Ronnie or Albert at the meeting, but what I will do is bring information back and share it with the public and at one of our meetings, and try to get some direction if they agree or not. But, that's where I'm at with it, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, Albert, but I just wanted to make it clear that we don't necessarily have to use this board to set up a committee.
I agree.
We can do it individually, which is what I've chosen to do.
Well, I think it can move forward more informally and with some speed. My concern is that when I leave this meeting and go back to talk to people in town, they will say, what's happening? It's 3 weeks since the meeting. We didn't know there was going to be a document. Now we've got the document. We haven't really had time to examine it. And we haven't heard from you about the committee, or whatever you want to call it. I think Mayor Foster actually called you about that, but I don't believe he had any information on the idea.
Call me about what?
About the idea which was discussed on February 11th, which you talked about, which was putting together a group of people on either side. And I call it equal. Not just that you guys are running it or we are, but we're doing it together. And that's what people will be asking about, because there's concern that it's taken a year since the University of Maryland study was done, which Pat has critiqued, and we're still at this. I mean, it's not as if this is, a fast track, but I do think it needs to be sped up, and people are concerned about it. They're annoyed because they know there are tax increases coming. So I'll leave it at that. Mr. Fithian, do you have anything to say?
Well,
Let me, you said it was hearsay, it was my opinion.
Yes.
So it wasn't hearsay, it was
I'm
my opinion.
happy to hear an opinion.
Well, that's what my opinion was.
Right, go ahead.
So I haven't put, I'm not gonna lie to you, I haven't put any thought into this committee that we're talking about here today. And moving forward, I mean, I'm willing to listen to whoever the sheriff is thinking about doing this. I don't know that we're gonna find a whole lot of people in the county, in all honesty, interested in this committee. Certainly, I mean, and that's, the people that I talk to aren't gonna be interested in sitting on this committee. That's not hearsay, that's a fact.
Right, okay, I appreciate your opinion. Mr. Fithian, any comment from you?
Well, the comment I have is that we're here talking about taxes. And if you're sitting where I'm sitting, I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on a committee because this county's got its work cut out for us to make sure you ain't paying more than you're paying now. If you had a list, we should have prepared that, but we'll see when it's all said and done. When this legislature gets done in Annapolis, and their great thing is that they spend more than they can afford, and then when they run short, they send it down to us. We've got unfunded mandate with the Kerwin Commission, which is about $1.3 million right off the top. We got 400,000 or 500,000 more that we know of that's gonna be handed down. Now we're up around $1.8 million. A lot of years, we don't take in much more than $1 million, and maybe $1.5 million. So we're behind the 8 ball already, and the legislature isn't even gotten done yet. And we're talking about a new school, and we're talking about a lot of stuff. I'm not gonna be involved in a committee. I'm gonna be doing my job and to try to find out what we can afford and what we can't afford so that we don't get in the same shape the state's in.
Right, well.
And I think my position is, look, I've been pretty steadfast in my beliefs about the tax differential from day one. So don't blame me for anything other than being honest. You and I have a difference of opinion.
It's not just you and me, it's a lot of other people.
Well, and I bet you there's as many people on my side probably as it is yours. We're not, this ain't the numbers, you know, we are the ones who have to deal with this budget. And we're gonna deal with it. I've done it this is my 27th time.
Yes, but you deal with it as public servants.
Well, we deal with it the best way we can, and we live within our own means.
Sir, you are not public officials.
Look, I'm getting ready to,
the
one thing the chairman does have, and that's the authority to stop a conversation. So
okay,
I think you've had a fair amount of time, and we'll move on to the next speaker.
I finished.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. David Sobers.
Wow. I have very little to say. Most of the points that I was going to make have been made by the two previous speakers. My view is, I think Commissioner Price has made the point that he's working diligently, trying to put together this commission or study group, whatever it ends up being titled, and we need to give you the time to do that. It'd be nice if there could be at least a sense of when it might be formed, you know, by summer or so, or within 1 or 2 months, just to put some kindling in the fire.
I don't have a timeline, and I don't want to put anybody on the spot. I can try to find out when we could, and again, this is something that I'm doing individually. And this isn't, and it's my hope that I can gather information, either for or against, as we go through the information, and then bring it back to my colleagues and share it with them. And if it's worthy of a discussion, then we'll have a discussion. I can say this, that I'm trying to keep an open mind with it, but if you're sitting here for 2 years, I have to agree with Commissioner Fithian's viewpoint at this point that it's going to be very, very difficult for the county to do anything other than try to maintain what we currently have. I hope I'm wrong, but the forecast from the state is very, very dim as far as funding for our county. And we just heard tonight, all of the revenue that might be above last year, we've already been told that it's, you know, there's nothing for operating now. There's no new money that I'm aware of unless we get a different forecast for operating the county, if we were to fulfill all the other requests. So it's very, very difficult. And I understand the frustrations that we all three sometimes share, because we're aware of other things that sometimes the public isn't aware of. But I am committed to being part of this committee and seeing this thing through.
Good. And there are two issues. There's the tax equity issue that has been spoken to rather firmly tonight, but there's also the whole question of economic development and how to jack up the revenues that are coming into this county. And there are creative thoughts that can come out on that.
And when I met with this group, that's something that we spoke of.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. That concludes the speakers for tonight. Anyone else have forgot to, sir?
Sorry, kind of new to this. I came here for the village of,
Well, come on up front, give us your name and address, and we'll certainly hear you out.
this is kind of off topic for a little bit, but just kind of concerned. Zach Seggers, Village of Kennedyville.
Welcome.
Thank you, appreciate it. Sorry for, anyway, just a little bit of a concern now that I have a younger child. 213, it's 30 miles an hour right there, that small stretch of road. Consistently speeding through there a lot. Is there any chance of pushing that to a 25? Or at least setting a county cop in front of the neighborhood and getting some tickets for the county,
County cop would be in their purview, but the speed limit, I think we have to go to the
State highway.
state highway.
State highway issue? Okay, I've just, like I said, I don't know how this
And
works.
what they'll do is they'll actually do a survey
Okay,
to see if in fact it meets their criteria for loaner.
okay, I mean, they sit there time and time, but just today, coming out, tractor trailer, 45, 55 miles an hour, and there's kind of a little blind spot area, and if you're not quick enough with your head, and I know there's a couple new drivers in the development, younger kids, and I used to live in Delaware, and there was a road that was 30, and you saw accident after accident, death after death, and I just didn't know if that was something to kind of think about, or at least have a cop write up some tickets and get some money for the county.
Well, the money doesn't go to the county, it goes to the state of Maryland.
Well, something that might trickle down to you guys, but.
Maybe it would provide a way to maybe slow people down as well as create some legitimate revenue for our state of Maryland that desperately needs it.
Okay. Coming from Delaware, we always knew you don't speed in Maryland. That's kind of a thing. So, yeah, just something, I know it's kind of a little off topic for tonight's situation, but I was just, wanted to put it out there.
State highway is where you want to go for your request.
Okay.
And if you want additional speed enforcement, you should call Sheriff Hickman
Sheriff Hickman?
at the sheriff's office.
Okay.
And I'm sure he will be happy to try to put
Perfect.
some additional people there.
Thank you guys for listening. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you staying.
Have a good night.
Appreciate you coming in. Thank you. There being no one else, then I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Got a motion? Do I have a second?
Yeah.
A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.